I sent it at 6:14 inches the morning. No capitalization, no punctuation at the end, just the words as they came out of me. Mom passed an hour ago. I'm still at the hospital. Can someone come? That was it. Nothing else. I didn't know what else to say. I had been awake for 31 hours. My mother had been sick for 4 years, and in those 4 years, I had rearranged my entire life around her illness. I had moved back into my childhood home at 28 years old. I had turned down a promotion that would have taken me to Seattle. I had canceled a trip to Portugal I had been saving for since college. I had learned how to give injections, how to read oxygen monitors, how to sweet-talk insurance adjusters on the phone at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. I had learned how to hold someone's hand while they slept so they didn't feel alone in the dark. And when she finally let go, quietly, just before 5 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, I was the only one in the room. I held her hand for a long time after. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there in the vinyl chair I had basically lived in for the past 3 weeks, listening to the monitor flatline and then go silent, and I thought, she is not in pain anymore. I let that be enough for a few minutes. Then I picked up my phone and opened the family group chat. My brother was the first to reply. He and his wife lived 40 minutes away. That's rough. We have the kids this week, so it's complicated. Keep us posted on arrangements. Keep us posted on arrangements. My aunt, my mother's younger sister, sent a prayer hands emoji and then nothing. My cousin, who I had called 3 times in the past month to say we were getting close, sent. So, sorry honey. Let me know if you need anything. I stared at the screen until the words stopped making sense. Then I put my phone face down on the tray table next to my mother's empty cup of water, and I sat with her a little longer. A nurse came in. Young, maybe 24, dark circles under her eyes from the night shift. She took one look at me, and then at the chair I was sitting in, at the blanket across my lap, and the half-eaten granola bar on the table, and the way I hadn't moved when she opened the door, and she said, very quietly, "Is there anyone coming for you?" I said yes. I didn't know why I said yes. She nodded. She finished what she needed to do. Before she left, she set a full cup of coffee on the table next to me. Hospital coffee, the bad kind, in a foam cup. She didn't say anything. She just set it there and left. I drank the whole thing. I drove home alone at 7 a.m. The streets were just starting to fill up. People on their way to work, radios on, coffee in hand, ordinary Tuesday. I sat at a red light on Maple and thought about how my mother used to sing in the car. Old country songs she'd learned from her own mother, songs I had pretended to hate when I was 16. I would give anything to hear one of them right now. I pulled into the driveway of the house I had not technically left in 4 years, and I sat in the car for a while. My phone was full of messages from friends. People who had known my mother, people who barely knew me, coworkers. My college roommate who I hadn't spoken to in months. They all said some version of the same thing. I'm so sorry. She was such a light. You were so good to her. Please let me know if you need anything. There was one new message in the family group chat. My brother again. When you get a chance, can you check if she had a life insurance policy? The funeral home is going to ask. I read it twice. I put my phone in my bag. I went inside and I slept for 4 hours, and when I woke up I made a list of everything that needed to happen and I started making calls. My brother did not come that day. He came 3 days later, for 2 hours, to walk through the house and ask about certain furniture pieces. His wife stood in the kitchen and talked about how hard the drive had been. I offered them coffee. I made the coffee. I poured it. I stood at the counter while they sat at the table and talked about what to do with my mother's china cabinet. At the funeral, he gave a eulogy. He talked about their mother, her warmth, her cooking, the way she had always been there for the family. Everyone cried. People told him it was beautiful. I sat in the front row and I held the program with both hands, and I did not cry during his speech. Not because I wasn't sad, but because grief that deep doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like the only person in the room who actually knows what medication she was on in the end, what her last real meal was, which song she asked me to hum to her in the middle of the night when she couldn't sleep. He did not mention that I had been there. He did not mention that I had moved back home. He spoke about her like she had been tended to by everyone equally, like the past 4 years had been a family effort. After the service, in the parking lot, someone touched my elbow. A woman I didn't recognize, maybe 60, silver hair, a single strand of pearls. She said, "You're the one who took care of her." I could tell. The ones who really do it, they have a different kind of quiet. I didn't know what to say. I shook her hand. She walked away before I could ask her name. 3 weeks later, I was cleaning out my mother's room when I found the journals. She had kept them for years. Composition notebooks, the same kind I had used in school, stacked in the back of her closet behind a box of old Christmas cards. I sat on the floor and I started reading, and I couldn't stop. She had written about everything. The early days of her illness, the fear, the appointments. The way she had watched me rearrange my life and felt guilty about it. The conversations we had had at 2 a.m. when neither of us could sleep. The things she wanted me to know that she couldn't always say out loud. On the last page of the last notebook, she had written one paragraph in shaky handwriting, probably in the final weeks when her hands had gotten worse. My daughter showed up every single day. She didn't ask to be thanked. She didn't keep score. She just stayed. I want the world to know that there are still people like that. People who stay. I photographed that page. I don't know why. I just did. I didn't post it. I didn't send it to anyone. I set my phone down on the carpet and I sat there in my mother's room for a long time, surrounded by her things. And I let myself feel the full weight of what the last 4 years had cost me and given me at the same time. I was not angry. Not at my brother. Not at my aunt. Not at anyone who had not shown up. I was just tired. 2 weeks after that, something happened that I did not expect and did not ask for. A woman named Patricia, who had been one of my mother's nurses in the early days of her diagnosis, had kept in touch with me loosely over the years. Texts here and there, checking in. She had seen the obituary. She had come to the funeral, sat in the back, slipped out before I could find her. She had read the guest book and seen the comments, and something had stayed with her. She had a small blog, the kind that maybe a few hundred people read. She wrote about caregiving, about what it takes out of people, about the invisible workforce of daughters and sons and spouses who quietly dismantle their own lives to keep someone else comfortable. She had asked me, months earlier, if she could write something about our family's experience, and I had said not yet. She didn't ask again. She just wrote it. She wrote about the 4 years. About what she had observed. About a woman who came to every single appointment, who had the chart memorized, who advocated and fought and showed up and stayed. She didn't use my last name. She didn't need to. She wrote, "I have watched a lot of families navigate illness. I have seen every kind. And I have never once seen someone do what she did, quietly, without recognition, without complaint." She posted it on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, a caregiver support organization had shared it. By Wednesday afternoon, it had been picked up by a regional news outlet. By Wednesday evening, my phone was ringing with a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. The next morning there were more calls. I didn't answer those either. I was in the middle of dealing with the estate paperwork, the insurance documents my brother had asked about, the accounts and the titles and the 100 small bureaucratic dignities of wrapping up a life. I didn't have time for phone calls. But then my college roommate called and said, "I don't know if you've seen this, but your story is everywhere. And I think you should see the comments." I looked. I don't know what I expected. But it wasn't that. There were hundreds of them. Caregivers. Adult children who had done exactly what I had done, who had stayed and sacrificed and been invisible while siblings took vacations and offered thoughts and prayers and showed up at the funeral to cry in front of other people. They wrote things like, "This is my life," word for word. And I thought I was the only one. And I haven't slept a full night in 2 years and no one in my family has asked how I'm doing. I read for a long time. I didn't comment. I didn't share. I just read. That night I found one that stopped me cold. It was from a woman named Denise. She wrote, "My mother died 6 months ago. I was her only caregiver for 3 years. My brother came to the funeral. He cried. Our relatives told him what a devoted son he was for being there. No one said anything to me. I have not been okay since. Reading this made me feel like I existed again. I screenshot it. I stared at it for a long time. I called Patricia. She answered on the second ring, and before she could say anything, I said, I want to do something. I don't know what yet, but I want to do something real. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I've been waiting for you to say that. My brother called the next day, not a text, an actual phone call. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. He didn't ask how I was doing. He said, I saw the article. People at work are talking about it. I waited. You should have told us it was that hard, he said. I held the phone for a second. I thought about all the times I had said it. Directly. Not dramatically, not with an ultimatum, just clearly, in plain sentences. I need help. I can't do this alone. Can you take her to her appointment on Thursday? The times he had been too busy, the times he had offered money instead of presents, the times I had stopped asking because asking and being refused felt worse than not asking at all. I said, I did. He didn't say anything. I said, I hope you're well, and I meant it. And then I hung up. There was no satisfaction in it. Just a quiet kind of closure, like a window being shut gently on a room you're done with. The organization that had shared Patricia's post reached out formally that week. They asked if I would be willing to speak at their annual conference in the fall. Not about grief. About caregiving. About what support should look like, what it actually looks like, and the distance between the two. I said I would think about it. In the meantime, I started writing. Not for anyone at first. Just for myself, at the kitchen table in my mother's house. In the early mornings before the day started, I wrote about what the 4 years had looked like from the inside. The logistics, yes, but also the emotional architecture of it. The way you learn to hold your own needs at arm's length. The way certain friendships survive it, and certain ones don't, and what that tells you. The way you develop a relationship with silence that most people your age don't understand. The way grief, when it finally comes, is layered in ways no one prepares you for, because you've already been grieving for years in smaller portions. Every time the person in front of you became a little less themselves. I wrote about what I wished had existed. Not just meal trains and flower deliveries, though those things matter. Something more structural. A network. A real one. People who could step in for a day or a week so that the primary caregiver could sleep, could work, could remember they were a person with a life and a future outside of that role. People who had been through it and come out the other side and could sit with someone who was in the middle of it and say, I know exactly what this is, and you are not going to disappear. I called it the Stay Project. The name came to me at 6 inches the morning, same time I had sent that message to the group chat 4 months earlier. I wrote it at the top of a new notebook and underlined it twice. Within 3 weeks of posting a single paragraph about it on a platform I had barely used before, I had over 200 messages from people who wanted to volunteer. A woman in Arizona who had cared for her husband through ALS and come out the other side and had nowhere to put all that experience. A retired social worker in Ohio who said she had been waiting for something exactly like this for 30 years. A man in his late 60s who had watched his sister do what I had done, alone, for 5 years. And had never forgiven himself for not doing more, and wanted to make it mean something now. A hospice organization in 3 states offered to partner with us. A local foundation offered seed funding. Someone donated a website. By the time fall arrived, the Stay Project was real. Not a dream, not a paragraph in a notebook. Real, with a board and a mission statement, and a network that spanned 11 states and a waitlist of families who needed support and volunteers who were ready to give it. I went to the conference. I spoke for 18 minutes. I didn't have notes. I just talked about my mother, about the vinyl chair, about the foam cup of coffee a tired young nurse had left on a table without saying a word. I talked about Denise's comment and what it had meant to me. I talked about the difference between showing up and being present and the distance between those two things, which is wider than most people ever realize until they're standing on one side of it. When I walked off the stage, there was a line of people waiting to talk to me. I stayed for 2 hours. I did not check my phone once. The article came out the following week. A journalist I had met at the conference had spent a month reporting it. Front page of the lifestyle section. A photograph of me at a volunteer orientation, my back to the camera, talking to a group of people around a table. The caption said, "One woman turned 4 years of invisible labor into a national support network. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because she knew what it felt like when no one shows up." I read it at the kitchen table in my mother's house, which was starting to feel a little more like just my house. There was a plant on the windowsill that I had bought for myself, for no occasion. There were books on the counter that I was reading for pleasure. There was coffee brewing that I had made just for me. My phone lit up with a text from a number I had saved under my brother's name. No greeting. Just, "Saw the article." She would have been proud. I set my phone face down on the table. I thought about my mother's handwriting in that last notebook. I want the world to know that there are still people like that. People who stay. I thought about the nurse with the foam cup of coffee. I thought about the woman in the pearls in the parking lot who had seen something in me that I had not yet found words for. And I thought about Denise, wherever she was. And all the people like her who had been sitting alone in hospital rooms and empty houses, holding the whole weight of something by themselves, invisible and exhausted and still going. I flipped my phone back over and I opened a new message. Not to my brother, to our volunteer coordinator. I typed, "How many families on the waitlist right now?" She replied in 2 minutes. 37. But we added 4 new volunteers this morning. I wrote back, "Let's get them matched by the end of the week." I set my phone down and I picked up my coffee and I looked out the window at the yard my mother had loved. The hydrangeas were still there, blue and a little wild, exactly the way she had always let them grow. Some people wait for acknowledgement before they begin. They wait for the apology, the phone call, the moment when the people who didn't show up finally look them in the eye and say, "We should have been there." I understand that wait. I lived in it for months. But acknowledgement from the wrong people does not fill the right spaces. It just reminds you of the distance. What fills the spaces is something you have to build yourself, deliberately. Out of everything they left empty. My brother and I talk occasionally now. Not often. Not the way siblings on television talk, with inside jokes and Sunday dinners and old shared shorthand. More like 2 people who grew up in the same house and became very different adults and are slowly figuring out what, if anything, that means going forward. It is not warm, but it is honest. I think I prefer honesty to warmth when I can only have one. My aunt sent a card when the article came out. A physical card, in an envelope, with a stamp. She wrote, "Your mother always said you were the strong one." I think she was right. I put it in a drawer. Not because it didn't mean anything. Because some things land too late to go on the mantle but still deserve a place somewhere. I do not tell this story for sympathy. I don't need it anymore. I tell it because I know that somewhere right now, there is a woman sitting in a vinyl chair in a hospital room at 5 inches the morning, alone, and she has sent a message into a group chat, and she is watching the silence stretch, and she is starting to believe that silence means she is not worth showing up for. I want her to know that is not what the silence means. The silence means that some people are only capable of the easy version of love. The version that shows up at funerals and cries and goes home to their ordinary lives. It is not enough. It is not what you needed. And it does not define what you are worth or what you are capable of building from here. The ones who matter are not always the ones connected to you by blood or history or group chats. Sometimes they are a tired night shift nurse who sets down a cup of coffee without saying a word. Sometimes they are a stranger in a parking lot who sees your particular kind of quiet and knows exactly what it cost. Sometimes they are 300 people on the internet who read 4 sentences about your life and say, "Me too. I thought I was the only one." Thank you for existing. Those are the ones. Hold on to them. My mother's hydrangeas need to be cut back this year. I have been putting it off because I don't entirely know how, and because there's something about the way they grow wild that she would have liked, all blue and sprawling and indifferent to tidiness. But I will learn. I will figure it out, same way I figured out the rest of it. One thing at a time, with the right people beside me. Last week, we matched our 100th family. I printed the email out and put it on the refrigerator. I thought about texting my brother. I thought about what I would say. Then I put my phone down and I made dinner and I ate at the kitchen table with the plant on the windowsill and the books on the counter and the quiet that doesn't feel like emptiness anymore. It feels like room. Room for everything I haven't built yet. Room for everyone still finding their way here. Room for the next woman who sends a message at 6 inches the morning and doesn't know yet that the answer she needs is not coming from the group chat. It's coming from her. It was always going to come from her.